Hello, 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 hello. Thank you so much for watching. Hello, hello, hello. Can you hear me? Oh, we're doing good. We're doing good. I think you guys can hear me. So I just want to start off with, first of all, thank you all for watching. Thank you to moderators. I see Mark Plott and Mark Potachnik. God knows, I think I'm pronouncing Potachnik right. I love both you guys, and Jim Whitehead, I think, might be involved too. Thank you all for being here. Please check out the t-shirts at elonbits.com. This is not one of the most popular ones, Tesla Air, Cybertruck, and so on. After this video, I'm going to be doing another live stream on the good Konbanwa. After this video, after this live stream, I'm going to do a second live stream on the Locals platform, the Daily Lie. I'm going to talk about let Elon be Elon. I'm seeing a lot of criticism. I feel like the criticism of Elon from Tesla fans is amping up, and I think it's wrong, and I'm going to discuss why. So that's going to be in the next live stream. That live stream is free to watch. People who are paying supporters of the Daily Lie will be able to comment on that video or participate in the live chat. So that's a platform that I've been working on. That's political Warren instead of Tesla tech Warren. Sometimes I do tech stuff on there too. So the first thing I want to talk about, I just spoke at TeslaCon Florida, and I want to emphasize, because the first video in the series I'm working on, I was somewhat negative on the earnings report from Q3. And I want to be clear, there's a long-term future that I want to focus on for a second. So I've done this before, but let me just lay this out for you really, really quick. One, the battery revenue model. This is a model that Elon at one point endorsed. Some people thought he got it from me. I'm pretty sure he came up with it on his own. But the battery revenue model. Tesla has plans to make products containing 3 terawatt hours of batteries in 2030-ish. Maybe 2029, maybe 2031 or 32, but 3 terawatt hours of batteries, 3,000 gigawatt hours of batteries in 2030-ish. Tesla currently sells products at roughly $500 a kilowatt hour. The Mega Pack is about $2 million for 4 megawatt hours. That's $500 a kilowatt hour. If you had an imaginary Model 3 that you sold for $30,000 with a 60 kilowatt hour pack, that would be $500 a kilowatt hour. In reality, a base Model 3 is selling in the United States, at least for $47,000, might be selling for less in China, has about a 60 kilowatt hour pack. It's really more like $700 or $800 a kilowatt hour for that. A lot of Tesla products are significantly more than $500 a kilowatt hour. But go with that ballpark, $500 a kilowatt hour. 3 terawatt hours. This assumes, and by the way, I believe it's 3 terawatt hours of Tesla produced batteries, does not include supplier produced batteries. It might be 6 terawatt hours of batteries in 2030, products containing 6 terawatt hours of batteries in 2030. That's how nuts this gets. But let's just go with 3 terawatt hours at what I think is a very conservative $500 a kilowatt hour. That is $1.5 trillion in revenue in 2030-ish. Maybe it's 2031, maybe it's 2029. $1.5 trillion in revenue. The last 12 months, Tesla has about $80 billion in revenue. So that's a 20x roughly in revenue for Tesla in 8 years. If they have 20% margin, 20% net margin, that means a net income of that's a net income of $300 billion a year. This is without Robotaxi. This is without bot. This is without AI training supercomputers. You've got $300 billion a year in profit. Their revenue this year is only about $80 billion. $300 billion in profit. At that point, they're still growing. You give it a 20 price earnings ratio, you've got a $6 trillion market cap. And right now we have about a $600 or $700 million market cap. So I just want to be clear. I got some pushback from people that I was being too bearish in part 1 of the series I just did. This is the small valuation of my simple models of looking at Tesla in the future is 3 terawatt hours of battery products with 3 terawatt hours of batteries selling at $500 a kilowatt hour. You get 1.5 trillion in revenue. You get about $300 billion in net profit. You get about a $6 trillion market cap, could be a $10 trillion market cap or more on that alone. There's no Robotaxi. FSD never takes off, right? We never get a high take rate on FSD. If nothing goes right on anything else, and they just managed to sell 3 terawatt hours worth of products in 2030, it's that big. Okay, so that's the start. Now, if you add in FSD, it gets bigger. If you add in Robotaxi, which I'm going to do next, it gets a lot bigger. If you add in bot, it gets a lot bigger. So just to give you the sense of, I'm a long-term hyperbole. This is where the hyperbole comes from, right? Is the battery revenue model. How many batteries are going into the products? What are they getting revenue per kilowatt hour? What's the profit story? What's the growth story? It's I mean, 20 price earnings ratio is insanely low for the rate of growth we're seeing from Tesla and the rate of growth I expect in the future. You know, I think Apple has currently got like a 30 price earnings ratio. And, this is, Tesla's still on the growth path, faster growth at that point than Apple is today. And I think you're going to see an easy 20 price earnings ratio. Maybe it's 30. And maybe it's $500 billion in gross profit. And then it's a $15 trillion market cap. Okay, so that's one. Okay. The Robotaxi model is nuts. The Robotaxi model, start with what Elon said at Autonomy Day, that Tesla would have its own fleet of 10 million Robotaxis. My gut hunch is with the next generation vehicle, the cost to Tesla of operating its own fleet of vehicles, all in, amortizing the vehicle, electricity, tires, insurance, whatever you want to throw in there, their all-in cost is going to be about 10 cents a mile. They're going to sell rides initially, at 10 million, I think you're going to be in the ballpark of $1 a mile with, let's say, 100,000 miles driven a year, 60,000 miles paid. Okay? So the 100,000 miles times 10 cents a mile gives you a cost of $10,000 a year. The 60 miles at $1 a mile gets you $60,000 a year in revenue. That's $50,000 a year in gross profit for each Robotaxi on average. And I'm being really conservative because that's $50,000 in profit. I've heard of Uber drivers making $140,000 a year. I don't think the average Uber driver makes $140,000 a year, but I've heard of Uber drivers making over $100,000 a year. Robotaxi should be more efficient in so many ways than the typical Uber driver. Lower cost, doesn't get tired, doesn't need sleep, can operate 16 hours or more a day. So many reasons why Robotaxi would make more. So when I say $50,000 a year in gross profit, I'm massively underselling this. Okay? 10 million vehicles, that's $500 billion a year in gross profit. Not net profit, gross profit. That's with only 10 million Robotaxis in the fleet. That doesn't include you and me and our Teslas, and we press the go make me money button on our cars, and our cars go join the Robotaxi fleet, and Tesla gets a share of that revenue. That doesn't include Tesla selling cars to Hertz, and Hertz operates a Robotaxi fleet, and Tesla gets a cut of that. And it doesn't include Tesla selling cars, and it doesn't include Tesla Energy. It's just the Robotaxi fleet alone. $500 billion in gross profit, probably $300 billion in net profit. And again, you're at $6 trillion or a lot more of market cap. Plus, you got Tesla Energy, which is going to be huge. Tesla Energy is going to have 2/3 of the batteries in the system, right? So you got $500 a kilowatt hour on the 2 terawatt hours of batteries that are in energy on top of this. So that's another $1 trillion in revenue. That's another $200 billion in net profit. The story's nuts. And then you take Robotaxi, you say, you know what? It's not going to stop with 10 million Robotaxis. It's going to go to 100 million Robotaxis. And that's still nowhere close to displacing the global fleet. Because if the average Robotaxi displaces 5 vehicles, and we got 2 billion vehicles in the global fleet, then 100 million Robotaxis only replaces 500 million vehicles. There's 1.5 billion vehicles left to replace. Right? It's going to be a long time before we replace the fleet of internal combustion engine vehicles. But 100 million Robotaxis, and let's say they only make $20,000 a year in profit, gross profit per vehicle, coming down from 50, which is really coming down from 100. Again, I think these numbers are massively conservative. That's $2 trillion, 100 million vehicles, $20,000 a year in revenue. That's $2 trillion in revenue, right? And sorry, that's $2 trillion that's $2 trillion in profit, $2 trillion in gross profit. Call it $1.5 trillion in net profit, 20 price earnings ratio. You're at $30 trillion market cap with fairly conservative assumptions. I mean, you have to get Robotaxi working, but by 2030, how many people doubt it's going to be working by 2030? I mean, it's probably going to be working. I think it's going to be working by the end of 2023. Limited Robotaxi fleets operating in San Francisco, Chandler, Arizona, where Waymo and Cruise are. But go out to 2024, 2025, it's going to be everywhere. It's going to be all over the United States, North America. It'll be operating in China. And you know, the profit story is going to be different in different countries depending on the wealth of those countries. But $20,000 a year is not that hard to imagine. Europe's going to have high profit story compared to China too. So there's a lot of money to be made doing that. So when you put those together, you've got two different models where you easily get Tesla to $6 trillion in market cap, which is a 10x from where it is today. And you not that hard to get it to a $30 trillion market cap, which is a 50x from where it is today. So you got $200 stock right now, or $210 of stock right now. That could be a $10,000 share in 8 years. I don't think this is nuts. I think I still might be underselling it. And then we get to bot. Brian Keck asks, let me just address this question. Brian Keck asks, you talked about the battery revenue model about 1.5 years ago. Has it tracked so far? I think it was 2 years ago, but maybe it was 1.5 years ago. The story hasn't changed. If anything, the dollars per kilowatt hour has gone up rather than down, because back a couple of years ago, we were still talking about a $35,000 Model 3, and now the cheapest Model 3 is $47,000. The battery pack's the same size. So Jim Whitehead says, won't some states block self-driving cars where all those like Florida welcome them? Some states will block them initially. This is the same story with Uber. At first, Uber was only in a few places, and a lot of states resisted, and eventually the people forced the politicians to give in. The special interest, the taxi fleets or whatever, there are special interests who don't want this disruptor coming in, but it will operate somewhere. The primary targets are Vegas and Orlando, because those are the convention centers. Those are the places where government bureaucrats go to conventions, and they're going to experience it. And they don't care about you and me. They're going to want this stuff for themselves. They're going to want boring company tunnels for themselves, and they're going to want robo-taxis for themselves because it's going to make their life easier. They don't care about us. But Texas, Florida, California, you're going to see fairly rapid adoption of robo-taxis. Arizona, you're going to see fairly rapid adoption of robo-taxis in some places, and resistance in Michigan for sure. Resistance in New York and Massachusetts for sure. But eventually, their people are going to travel to Orlando and say, hey, why don't we have this here? So that's going to happen. All right. The third thing is bot. Imagine a workplace that makes widgets. Okay, I like to use fast food restaurants, but I'm getting pushback on my fast food restaurant model. So let's just say you have a company that makes widgets, and there's 10 employees, and there are certain tasks that are boring and repetitive and maybe dangerous that have to be done, and they're shared across the 10 employees. It's not that bot replaces a particular employee. It's that the bot does enough work that the employer only needs to hire 9 people instead of 10 to do the work that the company does. And the bot works 2 shifts. And the bot and let's say the bot is generating is saving the company the equivalent of $20 an hour in expenses for that one. They've gone from 10 employees to 9, right? So we've saved you $20 an hour on 4,000 hours of work. 2 shifts is 4,000 hours. I think 4,000 hours is a massive understatement of what a bot can do, but let's call it 4,000 hours times $20 an hour. You saved the employer $80,000 a year. Okay, and it's not hard to see that going to $100,000 a year, but let's go to $80,000 a year. Times 10 years, the bot will probably last 10 years. You just saved the employer $800,000. What is the employer willing to pay for this bot? Is he willing to pay $50,000 a year to save $80,000 a year? How much can Tesla extract from this relationship? Let's suppose it's $50,000 a year that Tesla makes on the bot. And there's a variety of different models you can use for how Tesla's making money on bot. And keep in mind that as bot gets more and more training, it gets better at more and more tasks, is able to do more and more. And you can easily see a world of 100 million bots. There's 8 billion people on the planet. A lot of people are doing repetitive and boring work. Thank you, Unboxing, for your support. I'll get to your question in a second. 100 million bots generating $50,000 a year in revenue to Tesla. It's $5 trillion a year in revenue. That's $5 trillion a year in revenue. And that's the beginning. There's probably room for 1 billion bots. And then you've got bots on Mars, and you've got bots on the moon. I think Earthbound bots will be the most common, because if you have room for it, you're probably not going to have 10 million bots on Mars for a while, and you're probably not going to have, maybe you'll have 1 million bots on the moon and 10 million bots on Mars. Long run, space gets big, then we see more. Unboxing 101 asks, what's your thoughts on Tesla Roadster after Cybertruck, after Robotaxi, or never? I think Tesla Roadster is this year, as 2023. They've said Tesla Roadster is 2023. I don't see what would stop them from releasing it. I think Roadster is probably waiting on 4680 to be in volume production, and I think they release it by the end of 2023. I don't think it's important for the company. I think they wanted the reason. By the way, I don't think Tesla should do the Roadster. I fundamentally think the Roadster is a diversion from Tesla's mission, but there's two reasons. There's one big reason why Roadster will be delivered. The reason is that there's a lot of very wealthy people who work at Tesla very high up, like Elon, like Drew, like and on the board of directors, and they all want their Roadster. They want it. They can afford $250,000 for a car, and they want it. So it's going to happen for them. And a lot of top tier employees at Tesla want a Roadster. That's why it's going to happen. And I think it's going to happen by the end of 2023. Could it get delayed? Yes. I mean, they didn't mention it in the call. They weren't asked. It's not an important vehicle for the future of the company. I think that's an important thing to be aware of. Lido asks, was I driving into Merritt Island Thursday morning? I often drive from Suntree, which is like Rockledge, across Merritt Island to get to Satellite Beach on the mornings. I don't remember particularly Thursday morning, but it's my regular thing. I go to Suntree to go to my gym, and then I come back on the Pineda Causeway. That's my usual thing. Okay, so did I expose Biden or something? Yeah, probably. All right, so let me get to. I like to do this. If you are a supporter of me on Patreon or the Locals platform, or as a YouTube community channel member at the basic member level or above, then I wasn't as good about it this week. I usually ask people to submit questions in advance, and then I address those questions first in the Q&A. So AK asks, it's fun to speculate on what the unknown R&D that Tesla is doing. What's your best guess on what these projects might be? I actually, that's something I'm going to make a future video about that. I don't have a guess right now what they mean by that. I'm very, very curious of what that might be, and I don't have the answer. I think the secret is to look at Tesla jobs, look at what's listed on the Tesla jobs and see what's there. I mean, we know about AI, we know about bot, we know about robotaxi. Maybe they're working on a boat, maybe they're working on a jet. I don't think they're working on a jet. It's possible they're working on some kind of boat. That would make some sense. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe they're working on something that will go in Boring Company tunnels, which are going to become a very big market in the future. I know they're not working on a single passenger electric vehicle because I've asked them. And two high-ranking people at Tesla have told me they're not doing that. So the single passenger pod car that I'm working on, Tesla is not doing that. Unless they lied to me or they changed their mind. I don't think they're working on that. So, Eric Richner, Swiss Uncle, says, we'd like to hear your top 10 takeaways from the Q3 earnings call that affects your Super Bowl thesis for 2030. I don't think I'm going to make a top 10 takeaways from the Q3 earnings call. Maybe I'll go back and do that. I don't know if I have that. I mean, it's the kind of thing I should do, I suppose, as a YouTuber to get a good thumbnail and get more clicks, but it just doesn't. There's too much. I'm doing this series of videos on it. I'm happy with the series of videos I'm doing. What does the 1 terawatt promise mean in terms of Tesla supply chain and gigafactories? If you go on my channel, I did a video about a talk that Drew Baglino did at Stanford University. And he talked about the supply chain issue, and it was a really, really good. And fundamentally, the challenge is, and I think I just talked about it in my video earlier, the existing supply chain, significant parts of the existing supply chain were created in the past for other industries. And the EV and battery industry is getting some of these supply chains, some of these materials as a byproduct of some other industry. And now the EV and battery industry are growing so big that approach to generating some materials is insufficient. And Tesla is working on recreating the supply chain from the ground up, maybe literally from the ground up or from underground up, to create materials for batteries, to create materials for EVs, not as a byproduct of some other industry. And that's why in the earnings call, Elon was saying the cost is not going to be as much as people think. Because if you use the cost structure of the existing supply chain, then it's high. But if you recreate the supply chain in a more efficient manner, then I think you get the cost of this process down significantly. Upcoming tax incentives from the IRA plan. They talked about that in the earnings call. I mean, I don't have a lot to add on that. There's a lot of people who've talked about it. It looks very, very promising for Tesla in terms of profit. I don't think, number one, I don't think the Inflation Reduction Act, I think it should be called the Inflation Acceleration Act, but I don't see that law will, the Tesla's challenge isn't getting money in. They're cash flow positive in a big way. Their problem is getting the supply chain down. And I don't think the incentives, Tesla's working on the supply chain anyway. I don't think this changes anything. It will, and Tesla doesn't need a demand boost. It will, the tax credits will boost demand in the United States. The tax credits will make Tesla make more profits from their existing battery plants in the United States. But I don't think it, I mean, that's part of the Super Bowl thesis that profits go up. But my Super Bowl thesis is really more about Tesla's growth as a company. Their growth in battery production, their growth in producing products that use those batteries, their growth in, getting Robotaxi to work. And then the profits are really like the end result of what's really important is growing the company. So, I mean, I talk about profits and I talk about share price, but what I'm really excited about is growth. I own a lot of stock, so I should be excited. 50x would be very good for me. A 50x in the share price would be very, very good for Warren and his family, and probably would make it easier for me to have future children. Going from Teslanair to 50 Teslanair would be, or 100 Teslanair, whatever that crazy numbers that gets us to would be nice. But that might be more attractive to women. I don't know. I don't know if that seems to matter to women anyway. But all right. So Daniel Phelps says or asks, my experience with FSD Theta falls short of what I see on YouTube. Mine too. My commute to work and back always requires several interventions. Okay, this is a critical thing. Requires several interventions. I have interventions. Is it safety interventions? That's a term that Elon used. Is it safety interventions that's going to crash if you don't intervene? Or is it annoying interventions? Like it makes a lane change you don't agree with, or it might make a wrong turn and then it has to correct and come back, but it's not a safety intervention. The primary goal right now is building a vehicle that won't crash. That's what Ashok Elaswamy, the director of Autopilot, Tesla's director of Autopilot, said their focus is. They're trying to make a vehicle that won't crash. Making a vehicle that's better, that drives better, that doesn't make dumb mistakes, that aren't threatening, that I think they really got to get the nav right. So that's a secondary goal. First, they got to get it to make sure that it's not going to crash. He says the rest of the time, 60% of the time I'm wowed. The rest of the time I'm a bit disappointed. It's amazing what Tesla has accomplished, but it's hard to see how this is going to be safer than a human by the end of the year. I think it's already safer than the average human driver, or at least the average American driver. Because you're given the average, I think a lot of people who say this, you're thinking I'm the average driver. And most likely you are a better than average driver. I think if you compare it to the average human driver, you'll say, wait a minute. And then if your goal is safety, you're going to see something very different. So, yeah, but it's like really typical examples. I make left turns onto A1A on Satellite Beach or onto South Patrick Drive or North Patrick Drive, whatever, on Satellite Beach. And there's a suicide lane. It's a median lane where, you can make left turns out of this lane and you can come on from a side road and get into the median lane and then merge into the travel lane. And it does not handle the suicide lane well. It doesn't handle it well when somebody comes into the suicide lane. It doesn't handle it well when it's entering the road. To enter the road, if there's a lot of traffic, it should go into the suicide lane and then enter. And I think that's an evolution of Chuck Cook's left turn that will get better. So that's an example. And then there's a particular lane choices are bad. I think the lane choices are going to start getting better with the language model they talked about on AI Day. And then there's this particular right turn where it won't make a right turn on red, where it should make a right turn on red. I find like a lot of times it's very, very hesitant to make turns, and it's annoying to the people behind you. And the way it makes turns, let's say it's making a right turn on a road and there's a car coming from the left and it's very clear that it's safe to go, but the car's got this creep mode and it's creeping forward to see whether it's okay to go instead of just like, okay, it's obvious I can go and just go. And I think all these things will get better over the next few iterations. But distinguish between safety interventions and annoying interventions. Does your car struggle with any maneuvers regularly? Yes. I mean, there's this lane choices in particular. I think mapping and nav need to get better. I have many drives without safety interventions. I would say the vast majority of my drives have no safety interventions. And a lot of my drives have, I got annoyed with that interventions, or I want to go faster than the car is going interventions. I see an opening where I can get around this traffic and the car isn't going to seize that opportunity, so I take it. So I intervene a lot, but I intervene because like I want to get there, and it's not going to get there because it doesn't drive as aggressively as I do. So, which is safer than I drive, really. All right. So there's one more. Was one more question. This is from Jim Whitehead. Jim is usually a moderator. Jim's here. This is a moderator. Thank you, Jim, for moderating. Thank you, Mark and Mark for moderating. How is your pod car design coming along? If you, for those who aren't familiar with this, I'm working on a single passenger electric vehicle that's designed from the ground up, or will be designed from the ground up for self-driving. No steering wheel, no pedals, crazy stuff, no windows and doors. There may be some moderation of that. So how is the design coming along? What I have now is I have I bought a $1,000 kids electric go-kart. It's up to like 150 or 175 pounds. It's not and it's small inside. And I'm working with, I'm using the Upwork app, and I've got an engineer in Georgia who I'm pretty close to making a deal with, where he's going to take off the steering wheel and the pedals and put in a wired remote and a wireless remote, joystick, PlayStation remote, whatever. Then I'm going to build an aerodynamic shell on top of it. And this is not a real prototype. This is sort of like a pre-prototype or a proof of concept. And then I will make some videos, and I'm going to I have a professional video guy that I've worked with in the past, and I'm going to make some live videos with, and then I'm going to hire an animator, and I don't have the animator yet, to make some videos to go along with this. And I might ultimately have 2 pre-production prototypes. One should probably be enough. Make some videos, and then do a crowdfunding round. And I think, this may be optimistic, I'm always optimistic, I think I can raise $5 million. If Boxable can raise $5 million, I think I'm better positioned than Boxable to raise that first $5 million. And the $5 million was one of the keys for that, is that the $5 million will go really far, because my target product is $1,000 cost to build. Boxable's target product is $50,000 to build. You look at Arcimoto, you look at all these other companies that are building these products, and they're startups, their products are really expensive. Now, the first $1 million is engineering to get from Warren's crappy pre-production prototype to a pretty close to production prototype. And then we go to Tesla, and possibly Comma.ai, and possibly some other self-driving software, hardware software company, and test out. I want Tesla, just to be clear, and test out and see if we can get self-driving to work on the pod car, and then build a fleet. And if we can get the cost of the vehicles down to $1,000 a piece, or even $5,000 a piece, with $5 million raised, we can build 20 of them or 100 of them and find a market. My favorite choice would be the Dominican Republic, because it's the highest traffic fatality rate in the world, and it's also close to Florida, and see if we can persuade the Dominican Republic to let us do a trial run. Say, hey, we want to try to save lives in your country. You got all these people dying on your roads. I think 2 different Major League Baseball players were killed in traffic accidents in the Dominican Republic. Can we save lives? Can we get the drunks out of their cars and riding in the pod cars? Can we get the other people out of their dangerous vehicles and into pod cars? And then it won't be as safe as a Model 3. They won't be as comfortable as a Model 3, but they will be very, very inexpensive. The target is a penny a mile cost to the owner, which would be us for this initial fleet. 5 cents a mile for a ride, compared to, by the time we're operating, $1 a mile in the U.S., 50 cents a mile in the U.S. Kathy Wood's long-term forecast is 25 cents a mile for a robo-taxi ride. And we get the price to the rider down to 5 cents a mile. So that's the idea. Sorry. So Jim asks also, he noticed Arcimoto stock fell below $1 share. We're just going delisting. The way it's going, I hope you might buy it for a few coffees to get a factory. So I actually just talked to a couple of people from Arcimoto. They are still optimistic. They know they're in a difficult cash position, but one of the guys I talked to is confident they will get more cash. They need to scale manufacturing. Sandy Monroe is very, very positive about Arcimoto. He thinks they've made really big progress. I got to talk to Sandy Monroe this weekend at TeslaCon Florida. He's optimistic about Arcimoto. They're on the edge, with the financial situation we're in, the economic crisis we're in, it's a challenge. But I think we're going to see Arcimoto. I own Arcimoto stock, disclosure. I don't own a lot. I own a very small amount of Arcimoto stock. I think it might be less than $1,000 now after the stock price went down. But I think it's a good company. I think they're good people. I think they've got some work to do to get where they need to be to actually manufacture cars at scale. If they can manufacture their vehicles at scale, they're smooth sailing. If they can make 50,000 vehicles, they can sell 50,000 vehicles. You just got to get their butts in order, butts in gear. Let's take a shot every time Warren touches his face. Yeah, I'm getting that itch again. I hate that. So, all right. So again, if you support me on Patreon, Locals, or as a YouTube community channel member, you get to ask questions for the Q&A in advance. But of course, I'm still going to interact with the chat, which I already did. Let's see. Yeah, the self-driving car will be self-driving. It's no steering wheel, no pedals. The remote controls for the pre-prototype is just so we can use it to generate demonstrations. It's not that in the future. Now, and there is certainly the possibility that, one potential market for this thing is we're going to offer it as a toy. And you'll have the wired remote in the car, or you'll be able to use it as a remote control vehicle. If Tesla can sell, I sold my my Cyber Quad for kids for $2,500 cash. So if I can sell Cyber Quad for kids for $2,500 cash, then this thing will be way more practical than a Cyber Quad for kids in so many different ways. So I could probably sell them for $5,000. We can build them for $1,000 and sell them for $5,000. We already got a business, but that's not really the long-term goal. The long-term goal is to accelerate the transition to sustainable energy and transportation for people who can't afford a robo-taxi ride in a Tesla Model 3 or the next generation robo-taxi. Get that price down to 25 cents a mile. I want to deliver for 5 cents a mile and address the middle-class people in poor countries. So, would my product would have a lot of... India is a prime target, Lee. India is probably the #1 target. Egypt is a big target. I've talked to people from Brazil who think it'll be very successful in Brazil. There's a lot of places. Will I still be able to do your YouTube locals as your Podstar car stuff gets bigger, requires more attention? I think it's likely that will reduce my YouTube output. I think if I manage to raise $5 million through a crowdfunding round, and just to be clear, there's going to be no people in suits on the PDF or the pitch deck about here's my vice president for Latin American marketing, right? Lucid Motors, when they did their SPAC merger and they're promoting their company, they got like 27 guys in suits, which is a ridiculous spend of money. They're going to be really, really careful with the money. Probably hire 3 engineers, probably spend $1 million in engineering in the first 6 months. And then, then we start building vehicles and start working. And, ideally we're going to have like $3 million left when we're ready to start doing stuff. That's the vision. I'm doing great, Brian. Thank you. So I do expect that if I'm successful and I raise that money, well, then I got to put time into this, right? I mean, that is the vision, because ultimately, like if we raise 5 million, my net worth on paper at that point is like $95 million. We're going to value the company at $100 million, raise $5 million. Boxable did $5 million on a $236 million valuation. But what's the goal? The goal isn't to be a $100 million company. The goal is to be a $1 billion company. The goal is to be a $10 billion company. And you don't get there by making YouTube videos. You get there by, okay, we got this money. Now let's make our investors happy. Let's do this. Let's grow this. Let's, so I'll probably make 1 or 2 YouTube videos a week, but it's not going to be the volume I'm doing now. And I'll probably make videos about what we're doing with the pod car. So, all right. John Bay says, did I miss the Tesla Master Plan 3 release? They haven't done it yet. Elon's behind on it. Is there a China announcement tomorrow? I haven't heard anything. I did hear something that maybe there was going to be some announcement of a China Gigafactory, but the Tesla already acknowledged that they were going to do another Gigafactory in Shanghai. So let me just see. Admiral Medjay says, road rage is so bad in the US. As a foreigner, it's utterly terrifying. Therefore, if FSD can help me solve that too, let it whip. So I actually would say that FSD beta currently probably, I just had an incident where FSD beta was in the wrong lane and I had to change lanes and kind of cut somebody off to get to an open spot. The guy was kind of a jerk. Like I was forced to grab a spot. And the guy, instead of slowing down and letting me in, accelerated towards me and sort of forced me to drive further into the intersection that I wanted to. It was a red light. And then he got out of the car. I stayed calm. I didn't draw. I didn't roll down the window. I just ignored him. Unfortunately, he went back to his pickup truck. But, I mean, the FSD beta, when it drives like an idiot, safely drives like an idiot, can provoke road rage from the people behind it in particular. So that's not as simple as you'd like to think. Down the road, as it gets better, that should solve the problem. Be Nice says, Warren, what sets your tiny car different than the other tiny single occupant vehicles? Number one, it's smaller than anything I've seen. 3 feet wide, 4 feet high, or 4 feet wide, 3 feet high, 6.5 feet long, under 500 pounds. Arcimoto is like 1,300 or 1,100 pounds, seats 2 people. Arcimoto sells itself as fun to drive. Most of the single passenger vehicles sell themselves as fun to drive. What you want in a single passenger robotaxi is boring to ride. You do not want this to be fun to drive. You do not want high G-forces in a single passenger robotaxi that's tiny. You want it to be boring. Do not want excitement in that ride. So optimized for hyper efficiency. Going for 20 miles a kilowatt hour, which is a big stretch. The Model 3 is 4.4 miles per kilowatt hour, 4.5 miles per kilowatt hour. So the goal is, because we're so much lighter, Model 3 is 3,500 pounds, we're under 500 pounds. Frontal surface area, maybe 10 to 12 square feet versus 30 square feet for a Model 3. So you're got a lot less wind resistance and better coefficient of drag because you don't have windows and doors, and the shell is light. I actually think it's going to be under 300 pounds. The go-karts I've been looking at are like 100 pounds or 150 pounds. So probably going to be more efficient than they are, but we're going to have a bigger battery pack than they have. They have like, 1 to 3 kilowatt hour packs. We're going to go for a 10 kilowatt hour pack. So there's going to be some added weight there. But yeah, I think we're going to be under 300 pounds. And so I think we're going to see, like, I'm hoping we can get to a penny a mile cost of operation. That allows us to sell rides for 5 cents a mile and still make a healthy profit. And that enables us to spread and keep, but think about this. If Tesla's next generation vehicle has, let's say, a 50 kilowatt hour pack, and we can do it with a 10 kilowatt hour pack. If batteries are the limiting factor, we can make 5 times as many vehicles. We can transport 5 times as many people for the same amount of batteries. That's the vision. It's hard to accelerate the transition to sustainable transportation to the world's poor, or the middle class and poor countries, if you're battery limited. If you need 50 kilowatt hours in a vehicle, you can get down to 10 kilowatt hours or even 5 kilowatt hours in your vehicle. Because I have a picture of this as maybe even being a 5 kilowatt hour pack. 20 miles a kilowatt hour would be 100 miles range. A 10 kilowatt hour pack would be 200 miles range. You drive for 8 hours or so, you charge. You drive for another 8 hours, you charge at night. I think that works. All right, let me go back and see. Got about another 20 minutes on this live stream. Then I got another live stream. Look at the top of the chat, and I think I'm in the description below. I'll be doing a live stream on Let Elon Be Elon. That's going to be on the Daily Lie, the Locals platform that I do. It's a free speech platform. Have I seen Citroen Ami? No. I've seen a lot. Every time I talk about this vehicle, other people come up with, oh, what about this vehicle? What about this vehicle? What about this vehicle? They're always made to drive. They're always designed to be driven rather than be self-driving. They're always larger. They're often 3 wheels, which means you got a lot more tire wear. If you're trying to minimize cost per mile, you don't want your tires to wear out, and 3-wheel vehicle tire wear is going to be a lot worse than 4-wheel vehicle tire wear. That matters. When you do the math, it's like, wow, it's surprising how much that matters. So let's see. If Tesla gets to $1,500 by 2030, I'd be more than happy. $1,500. That's bearish, man. $2,000 a share, easy. $2,500, maybe $5,000 a share. Come on, let's get optimistic. Jim Whitehead says, sounds like you're reinventing the electric tricycle with a windscreen. It's 4 wheels. 4 wheels. It's 4 wheels. It's not 3 wheels. It's not a windscreen. It's a clamshell. It's a clamshell opening. That's why there's no doors and windows. It opens like this, and you step in from the front, sit down. And it's not like a recreational vehicle for children, because ultimately we want a top speed of 70 miles an hour, maybe 100 miles an hour. You don't want children playing with something that goes 70 to 100 miles an hour. So, I wanted to address Lucid Motors. Lucid Motors stock has been down about a lot. There's been some talk. I just wanted to address it quickly. I think James Stevenson has a chart that Sandy Monroe is showing. Lucid's got this really precarious cash position. And people were talking to me at TeslaCon Florida about Lucid, Rivian, and I laid out the problem with Lucid Motors is, number one, they run out of cash next year. Number two, where are they getting cash from? Who is going to, raise your hand and comment in the chat if you would buy Lucid stock for $10 a share, for $7 a share, if they issued new stock that dilutes the existing shareholders. How much are you willing to pay for Lucid Motors? I'm not willing to pay anything. I mean, I own 1 share just so I can have a shot at getting into a shareholder meeting. I wouldn't buy stock in that company. And are what the Lucid fans fall back on is, oh, the Saudis will backstop the company. Really? How much money do the Saudis have to put into this company? They're going to have to put in at least $10 billion more. Do they really want to put $10 billion more into a company that's probably going to fail anyway? I just don't see it. I don't know who's investing in Lucid Motors. I don't think they have special technology. They brag about their technology. I will say I talked to somebody who's really sophisticated in this stuff who does not think Lucid Motors has anything special in their tech. Somebody I have a very positive impression of who does not think Lucid is anything special. There's nothing that they haven't been bought yet. Apple didn't buy. If people think, oh, Apple's going to buy Lucid Motors. You know why Apple's not buying Lucid Motors? Because Lucid doesn't have anything. There's nothing. Nothing. Sorry. Let's see. A lot of poor people on welfare, working poor here in the USA, they can afford $5K for a simple car, at least on a loan. Okay, so let's be clear. I do not expect my pod car to be street legal in the United States. Four-wheel vehicles are very hard to make street legal in the United States. It's basically like a golf cart or a go-kart, and they're not street legal in the United States. There are communities that allow it. I think a friend of mine just told me West Virginia would be legal all over West Virginia. There's communities here that they allow golf carts on the roads or whatever, but it's not really safe to have a 300-pound vehicle going 70 miles an hour on a road with human drivers driving 5,000-pound SUVs, especially if it's low and hard to see. That's not the vision. The vision is, can it be safer than the rickshaws and tuk-tuks and mopeds that are driving in poor countries? Can it be safer than that? Can it be more convenient? Can it be cleaner? Can it be less expensive, or at least competitive? That's the goal. I think it'd be great in the Boring Company tunnel systems. It doubles the bandwidth of the lanes. It doubles or more the bandwidth of the stations. So that's definitely a target, and I think the Boring Company systems will grow. But it's not. If it was a three-wheel vehicle, it would be legal in the U.S., but I don't want a three-wheel vehicle. It doesn't meet the mission. And I think the vast majority of Americans who have a choice between riding in the back of a Tesla Model 3 or the next generation Tesla robo-taxi vehicle versus my pod car, if it saves them $20 to go on a 100-mile trip, they're going to take the Tesla. They're not going to ride in Warren's little pod car. I probably wouldn't choose that, right? Because the Tesla's going to be safer. The Tesla's going to be more comfortable. The Tesla's probably going to be faster. It's like, can we help that guy who lives on $2,000 a year in India, who's like a bookkeeper for a mid-level company, and 3 times a year he goes to visit his family in the village outside, 50 miles outside of town. And how does he get there? And can we give him that ride for $5 when it would cost $25 with something else? That's the vision. All right. And we're not going to get there by hiring, 25 guys in suits to handle marketing and whatever stuff. You don't hire those people until you have a car. That's my biggest beef with Lucid Motors, is you should have got the car working first before you hired all these idiots in suits. They have a video now on the Lucid channel about what a great place it is to work. And it's like their video production team is like talking about how great it is to work at Lucid Motors. How about just make some cars? What do you have all this other stuff for? I get ads for Lucid Motors all the time. Why are they advertising? They got 37,000 reservations. Why are they advertising? They're advertising because there's not enough customers for the car. Sorry. I'm not sorry. Yeah, Jim Whitehead says there's people who tool around in golf carts in their retirement communities. Yes, but this vehicle's designed to go 200 miles range. That's, your golf course community don't need that much range. I'm not optimizing for a vehicle to drive around on golf courses or drive around golf course communities. It's designed for a much larger market. And I'm not saying that there wouldn't be a version. If somebody said, hey, Warren, you could sell that here for $10,000 and we could make it for $1,500, then sure, we would do it. But it would have to be a high volume, and I don't think that volume is that high. Oh, yeah. Tight squeeze for Warren and his date in the pod car. It's not intended for 2. I do have a joke that we're going to name the Indian version Kara Sutra. Kara Sutra. Because it's going to have the shell, so you're going to have privacy inside, right? People are like, well, you need to have windows. People need to be able to see out. Well, you don't want people to see in if it's going to be Kara Sutra. So Lucid advertises to keep its stock up. Yeah. I don't think it's nudist communities. I think it's nudist colonies. Let's see. Thoughts on Musk selling this week? I haven't seen Elon sell. I don't know why people... I'm going to talk about this in the next video. Again, in about 15 minutes, I'm going to do a live stream on the Daily Lie on the Locals platform. There's a link in the description below, and there's a link in the top of the chat. People are obsessed with Elon selling stock for Twitter. It's like, well, he didn't. People were saying he was selling in the weeks leading up to the earnings call, and there was never a Form 4 filed. So when people were saying he was selling, he didn't sell. So that's not what caused the stock to go down. So why did the stock go down? Right? And you got all these people with Twitter overhang I'm going to talk about that in the next video. I'm going to talk about that on the Daily Lie. So I don't want to keep going on that. Be Nice says it could be toned down. My kid's mini bike can fly down the road. Four-wheelers go pretty fast. They don't go 70 miles an hour. They don't go 70 miles an hour. And, it's not, I don't want to create something. Again, I'm not creating, the vision is not a toy for rich kids. The vision is, and it's not fun. The vision is not, it's not intended to be fun to drive. It's intended to be crazy efficient. Now, can we make a fun version? Probably. Mark Plot says he would buy Lucid for 50 cents. Okay. That's not going to, the lower you make the share price, if Lucid does a funding round, right, they invite shareholders to buy stock, the lower they make the price of the stock when they do the funding round, the more they dilute existing shareholders, and the less attractive fundamentally they make the stock, right? If they sold it for 50 cents, then they would have to sell a ridiculous amount of stock to generate enough cash to keep the company going. So if they could do a funding round at like $12 a share, then maybe they could generate a certain amount of cash. If they can only do the funding round at $6 a share, they need to sell twice as many shares to get the same amount of cash. And the more shares they sell, the more they delete the company and the less people are willing to pay for the stock. It's a problem. The Lucid Air is Peter Rawlinson. He made like $300 million on this company. Hilarious. Hawkchu says, I am a person who likes Tesla as well as new company Lucid. We have to respect the all-new coming company. We don't have to respect a company that has a history of lying and misleading and deceiving. I mean, all you had to do is watch well, there's an earnings call coming up on November 8th. You go to the previous earnings call, which was August, I think. And there was a question to Peter Rawlinson, what's your current run rate per week? Or what was your highest run rate in the last quarter? And Peter said, I don't want to answer that question because the answer would be deceiving or misleading. Why don't you answer the question, then explain why the answer is misleading? There's the opposite of transparency. And look, Tesla doesn't answer every question. Sometimes they say we can't talk about that, but they tell us a lot. Admiral Medjay says, Warren, I hope you ride with your pea stick in the glove box. You never know with those jackasses. I am in the state of Florida, and I have a concealed carry license. I don't carry anything in the glove box. I don't need to use the glove box for that. I have a concealed carry license, and I'm in the state of Florida. It's more accessible than it would be in a glove box. Wireless steering, next major manufacturing change for Tesla vehicles. I think that might be on the next generation vehicle, yes. Brian Keck says, I'm visiting Brownsville in 2 weeks. Any must hits? Definitely need to rewatch your Brownsville video. Let's see. Well, obviously, Starbase is number one. And Starbase, this is a key tip. If you're going to Starbase, go to the bathroom before you go. There are no public restrooms within 30 minutes of Starbase. I'm not kidding. If you're comfortable peeing in the dunes, you can pee in the dunes. You probably don't want to poop in the dunes. So get your business done before you go. Wear a hat, wear sunscreen, whatever, because it's going to be hot. It's likely to be hot and sunny. Bring water. Bring water because you're gonna be drinking a lot of water. Spectacular to see. You can get really close to a lot of stuff. Really, really cool. Go to the beach. Go down the beach. Go south on the beach till you can see the Rio Grande. You can actually see the Rio Grande from a bunch of spots. So that's number one. Go to Starbase as much as you can. It's really cool to see it. I've been to Starbase. I went there for 4 days once with Ellie. I went back with Raphael and Justin and Nancy, and that's the number. But I think I every time I go to Starbase, it's cool to see. It doesn't get boring. It's amazing to see. Go get Tex-Mex or Mexican food in Brownsville. Get barbecue in Brownsville. La Frontera is a restaurant Ellie really liked La Frontera. I thought it was really good. There's some great barbecue there. A lot of people say go to South Padre Island. I honestly thought South Padre Island was less interesting than the rest of the place. South Padre Island is slightly like a tourist trap destination. It's not terrible, but I think the rest of the place is better. Downtown Brownsville has some nice places to go. I don't know anything. I haven't seen much beyond what I just described, so that's the best I can do on that. Thoughts on Arcimoto? I already talked about Arcimoto already. Arcimoto is heading for a cash crush, and Arcimoto is heading for a cash crush, and they're gonna have a problem. I think I have a reliable source who tells me that Arcimoto's cash problem will be solved, but it's a problem, and they got to get their manufacturing to scale. Ellie and I are not making videos together anymore, but I don't think there's any hate. I thought so. Let's see. Wear Pampers. Yeah, poop in the dunes. Take it with you. Is it legal to show someone your weapon? Depends on the circumstances. It's not. It's not legal in Florida to display a firearm unless you're in a legitimate open carry situation, like you're fishing or you're hunting. Matt Senkow, didn't I literally prove that Lucid has 1,000 undelivered cars? 1,250 undelivered cars at the last report, which was they reported how many vehicles they produced and how many they delivered. And when you combine the Q2 undelivered cars with the Q3 undelivered cars, you end up with 1,250 undelivered cars. There is an argument that I heard from Financial Journey, which is a pro-Lucid channel, who says that they produced a lot of cars at the very end of the third quarter, and that's why they didn't deliver that many. But he admits it's a question. That's how I heard him. The AANR Family Nudist Resorts. I don't know anything about this. Stefan, I've talked about Arcimoto, yes. Musk has never lied. Michael CZ2 says, yeah, Musk has never lied, like solar shingle presentation. I don't think Musk lies. I think Elon gets very, very enthusiastic and over-optimistic, and you have to take Elon with a grain of salt on his optimism. I do not think he lies. I think that is a bad misunderstanding of Elon. I think if Elon was a deceptive person and a liar, and he was motivated in that way to slick people over, he wouldn't be saying all the things that people are angry about. He wouldn't be doing Twitter. He wouldn't be talking about Crimea. He wouldn't be talking about all this other stuff. So, Jupiter James, hot take. There's zero evidence of Gary Black actually being a former Goldman Sachs managing director. Interesting. I don't have any opinion on that. I don't know. I've never looked into it. I like Gary. I disagree with Gary on a lot, but I like Gary. I think Gary has a lot of credibility, but it would be, if you have proof of that, or you have a way of showing me that he didn't happen, I don't know. I don't know how you would know that. Oh, 50 cents for the whole company, Mark Potashnik. Sure. Yeah. I would probably pay 50 cents for all of Lucid Motors. Yeah. See. I'm going to wrap this up soon because I'm starting a second live stream. Just be clear, I'm going to be doing a live stream on the Daily Lie. Link in the description below, link at the top of the chat. I'm going to be doing a live stream talking about Let Elon Be Elon coming up soon. I think you guys are talking about nudist colonies or something. I don't know, nudist resorts. GJC says you need to adjust your expectations on price to produce your pod car these days, as the janitor in the factory is making $25 an hour. I think so $1,000 cost to produce is a stretch goal. But I just bought an electric go-kart for $1,000, and that was the customer price. And there's companies in China that are making these 4-passenger small electric vehicles for like under $1,000. I think it's $900. So I'm not saying, and what we're going to make, the goal here is massive simplicity. That's another detail of the pod car. Massive, massive simplicity. I think we're going to have a unique part count of under 100 parts. We have one design. I was working with an engineer. We had a design. I think we had 44 unique parts, not including batteries. At 44 unique parts. If we can reduce the unique part count, that helps a lot. There's a lot of things there. Thank you, Savvy D, for your support. Yes, I'm doing a live stream on the Locals platform. YouTube is not a free speech platform. If I talk about certain things, I risk censorship. I think I already crossed the line once, potentially. I don't think so, but I said a word that makes it more dangerous. Name of a place name that's currently in controversy, and who knows. So if I limit myself in my YouTube videos to not talking about that sensitive stuff, then I can do that on this other platform that I call the Daily Lie. It's called the Daily Lie because I think that the media lies to us a lot. I think government lies to us a lot. The intent of the shirt, there's a shirt on elonbits.com, the Daily Lie, is intended to be the Times font as a reference to the New York Times. I'm not saying it's the New York Times font, but it's close. But generally speaking, I think the mainstream media lies to us, and I like to talk about the lies. But it's not all I talk about, and I want to talk about all the criticism of Elon lately from Tesla fans. By the way, have you noticed that you only see criticism of Elon from Tesla stockholders? You don't see criticism from SpaceX investors? Interesting. Why is that? Carlos says, is anybody else here concerned that pending World War III could disturb production? I think this is a key point. I want to make this. If we face World War III, I'm really not worried about my Tesla stock. If you think the biggest concern out of a nuclear war is your Tesla stock, I think you need to get your priorities in order. Let's see. Favorite thing coming from Elon or Tesla? My favorite thing right now is the Boring Company, Cybertruck. I've got too many favorite things. Starship, Neuralink is huge. I think the thing that people don't see coming is the Boring Company tunnel systems are going to be amazing. Yeah, the best part is no part. If I make the pod car as simple as possible, then the cost of manufacturing goes down and the supply chain risk goes down. Because if you have fewer unique parts, what happens is you make a vehicle with 10,000 parts and you can't get one part. Peter Rawlinson talked about this with Lucid Motors. There was some carpet they couldn't get, and they couldn't get the car. This was the story he told. I'm not saying I believe the story. There was some problem getting carpet, and they couldn't deliver vehicles because there was one part missing. The fewer parts you have, the less likely it is that you have a part shortage that you can't address. So radically small part count can really help. It can help making simplicity of manufacturing, and it can help simplicity of supply chain. So at the top of the chat is the link to the Daily Lie live stream. When will they test Starship again? I'm hoping it's by the end of the year that we're going to see that orbital test launch, but I don't know. I mean, I think they're constantly doing little tests here and there. You'd like to know my predictions for midterms. Any chance to get Biden and his demos up out here? I will say this. My political predictions are historically bad. Before the 2006, on the morning of Election Day 2016, I predicted that Hillary would win in a landslide and Trump won. On the morning of the 2020 election, I predicted Trump would win in a landslide and Biden won. So my political predictions are worthless. I do think everything I'm seeing, the Republicans are going to win a large win in the midterms. I'm expecting to do a video with Brian Wong. We're going to do a Zoom on Monday. I'm going to record it and edit it and probably publish it on Tuesday on the Locals platform, because that's not a safe topic to talk about on YouTube because of YouTube censorship. So that's the plan. Lucid Air Pure has 0 part count. Yes, that's right. All right. So I'm going to wrap this up right now. So please, if you're interested and you want to talk about Elon's behavior, Elon with Twitter, Elon with some country in Europe, Elon with some country that's off the coast of Asia that makes semiconductors and has a conflict with a larger country. If you want to hear that conversation, Elon saying things that offends people this way, that way, the other way, and that effect on Tesla, I'm going to be doing that in about 3 minutes on the Daily Lie. That's going to probably go about a half hour, and then I'll be done for the day. This has been a big day for me. I'm just trying out a different approach. So I want to thank the moderators. For everybody else, please check out the t-shirts at elonbits.com. Please check out my other videos. Please support this channel on Patreon, on the Locals platform, which we're about to go on as a YouTube channel member. Please like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe. And thank you so much for watching. Thanks, moderators. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Mark.